Are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with the Wisconsin statutes, so citizenry may be aware of the time and place in the agenda of this meeting. We will call for a roll call.
Donna Allenstein.
Here.
Bruce Brenner.
Here.
Johanna Edwards is excused tonight. Nick Gunderson.
Here.
Scott Rasmussen.
Here.
Jim Zandro.
Here.
We will ask them, we'll have pledge of allegiance. Johanna's not here, but maybe we'll have Jim start us with it, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, sir.
I would ask now that we have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
I second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next we'll have, I ask for approval of the minutes of our regular council meeting from August 19th, 2013, and the special council meeting on August 27th, 2013.
I move we approve council minutes for August 19th, 2013 and August 27th, 2013.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes, August 19th and August 27th. Any questions or comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next we have citizens' appearance. Frank Savoy, Library Representative.
Thank you. I'll pass this along because this is a special thank you for the city members to help us get that train trestle back up there again. For those of you who have never lifted that object, it is about 300 pounds. They took it down on 2 ladders, and when they took it down, they said, it's going back up, but there'll be a front-end loader helping us get it up there. All 2x6 construction underneath, all the way across the whole thing, so it is hefty. It is repainted. I have the new train cars. They're ready to go up. The caboose is ready. The engine was ready, but we're running into a little problem. So if you know anybody that likes to tinker with and is able to do some possible welding and or soldering, some of the gears are a little bit loose. Again, that weighs probably 75 to 100 pounds, and lifting that down on the ladder alone, it didn't take much to jiggle it a little bit and get it broken loose. And as soon as that's ready, then I will get all that stuff back up so that we have it back up in there again. But the only thing that I really have to report today is we are now handicap accessible with our upstairs washroom basins and the downstairs. We found out that the toilets upstairs are questionable on whether they are legally according to the standards. But apparently in a public building, if you have at least two that are, and our 2 downstairs ones are, the 2 upstairs are questionable. So the toilets are okay. Now we're back in business. We also waterproofed some more in the elevator shaft. And for those of you who've listened to me for 2 years, I'm like this and hope we don't get any more raindrops down there. Because anytime we have a water problem, it's frustrating to say the least. I say probably a few choice words that my wife doesn't want to hear. I don't know what else to do anymore if this doesn't do it. And what we did is I had the plumber in there. He looked at it and he said, you know, I'm wondering if you're getting some infiltration through the corners. They're a little bit open. So he used some of that hydro cement and sealed it all up. And we're going to watch now as we get the heavy rainstorms, and hopefully that there isn't going to be any problem there. Also, we changed, and Patrick might be able to help me out a little bit here, the water inlet into here, and that was all covered with the plumber when he did that all at one time. So right now I'm feeling we're under budget, and we're healthy, and we hopefully have some of that stuff taken care of. Any questions on, oh, and we did just finish the book sale. Had that over last week, and it worked out quite well. I apologize for being in the small room, but we have a library project going on in there. We have this group going on in here, and from 1 o'clock until about 3:30, we were doing some sweating, getting all the stuff taken away and putting the books away and getting both rooms ready so that we can utilize it tonight. So,
Frank, I just have one question.
yes.
Every time there's a ordinance change or state law change for your plumbing or your entrances, I assume it's not grandfathered in, am I correct?
You're correct. It's a public building, and the minute it's a public building, when you say grandfathered in, my interpretation, and I'm hoping somebody can help me out, we get a little grace period because we're here and it's not always in the budget. But I've worked with enough state inspectors, both at school and here. After a while, they get a little ugly when it comes to that and say, I told you that 6 months ago, and now you have 30 days, and it's either done or I shut you down. So it's one of those, when they come, you see to it that you somehow can get things taken care of real quick. But right now, since you've been on the council, we've changed the front door so we're handicap accessible. We've tried to address as we go along and stay within budget so that we don't overstep. And unless the law changes drastically, I think we're ahead of the game right now, so. Any other questions?
No, I was just curious because I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, it's one of those when they come in and they give you a suggestion. It's very seldom a suggestion. It's usually take care of it. We just told you and you have a little time to do it. And the magic word is little.
Thank you for helping with setup.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate
Right in there. I did not help in here other than make sure that Patrick and I
You're here,
met
that
a
was
little bit,
important,
and,
yeah. You're here.
so we saw to it, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Ganaway?
Hi.
Hi.
Actually, I was asked to come here by Johanna. She wanted to talk about the process that was undertaken in New London when the new community center was done in the Washington Center. Don't know if that's something you want to hear about tonight, or if I should come back another time when Johanna's here. But that was my purpose in coming. I was asked to come.
We would welcome that.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about it.
It was kind of a quick process because the senior center in New London was serving meals, just like we do at the Legion right now. I'm with the county. I oversee the aging and disability services with the county for adults. There was not really a community center in New London. A lot of things go on there. So at the time that we looked at doing the Washington Center, and at that time I worked for St. Joe's, and we were looking for ways to expand community services as well as meet some of the additional needs we have for St. Joe's. We talked to the City Council about the Washington Center, which they had ownership of at that time. We met with City Council, we met with the county, any interested parties to see what the interest would be in actually having a community center. It went pretty quick because there were a lot of needs, like an expanded food pantry, areas for adults to do activities, not just the seniors, but adults in general. They needed a place to put their transportation program. Some things that don't necessarily exist here right now, but may at some point. And when we had enough buy-in from community members and those on councils that felt that this was something that we should go forward with, we worked with Kent Hager, the city administrator. We also worked with Dave Teal from Economic Development for the county. We did a community development block grant that covered all of the public areas in the lower level of that building. And after a period of time of doing videos and putting together information about what could be done for the population that we were projecting. We were very successful with the block grant. So I'm sure that was part of what Johanna wanted to bring forward, that there could be monies available through grant possibilities if there still was an interest in doing a community center here. Now, where I look at it, say from the services I do, well, I've always been concerned about our seniors crossing Highway 110. You know, we have a sign out there now, which is very helpful, but still not everybody pays attention to signs. So it's a concern. Nothing has ever happened, but we see that if we have a special event, like a birthday party, we'll have like 35 people there. The other days, we may have, say, a dozen to 15 people that come for the meal. The activity portion is really important to those in our community. Unfortunately, it's something I cannot provide with the funding I get from the federal government. That's something that Caroline does extra, her own time to provide the activities. It seems like seniors may look for activities if there was a way of providing that. Now, I don't pay city taxes, so it's really easy for me to say that, because I do live in the township of Weyauwega. But I think that if there ever were a possibility, I think there are people, seniors, that would take advantage of activities. And then also a place to have additional things that maybe don't fit in the school district. Something that I'm hoping to put into place, and I don't know if I have the money yet, so I'll have to wait and see what I get for transportation funding, but I'm looking at possibly doing some cab service for senior and disabled persons over that noon hour, about a 3-hour block, to see if we can encourage more people to come, at least come for a nutritional meal. But that's where I would be very interested in, possibly a different site, a safer site, and more things for the seniors and disabled. As I say, I don't pay the city taxes, so it's easy for me to say, but I do know that when we went into the project of the extensive renovation at the Washington Center, it seems like for that entire community area downstairs, we got around $235,000. There was a city match to that. I don't remember the percentage at this time, and it may have changed because that was in about 2004, 2003. But there still are possibilities to get some funding if that's something that the council still wants to entertain. So,
Christy, who spearheaded the grant application, do you recall? Was that Dave? Did Dave?
Kent and Dave Teal
Dave
did
Teal.
the majority of the writing of it.
Okay.
I worked on the purposes behind what we needed building for. And we did do a fundraising program that helped pay for some of the additional monies that went into that the city did not have to put into it, because we came up with some other uses that were not necessarily city-run. We put an adult day service in there that, actually 2 of them that Lutheran Social Services runs. Just one of them is open right now, but there are other rented areas that are for not-for-profits. And that's the one stipulation: if it's not a city use or some other type of government use, it has to be a not-for-profit use. And then you're eligible. So.
Thank you.
How much fundraising do you recall was accomplished?
Well, that was for the whole building, because the entire building was renovated, and at that time it was $1.3 million.
And how much private is what I meant, of
Private.
donations did you receive? How much donations do you think you received?
Probably $1,070,000. But like I say, that was to renovate the whole building.
What size of building?
Well, it's the old, it was at one time the high
High
school
school,
in
yeah.
New London. It later became the junior high, so it's 3 levels. It included renovations to the gymnasium, and then apartments were put in it, assisted living apartments. So the block grants also covered some of what we did in the gymnasium too.
You were talking about a federal grant.
That was state funding. The
Oh, yeah, it
community
was.
development block grant, it was state funding.
Do you get any county funding at all?
No,
No.
mm-mm. There isn't anything. I mean, I was just going over my budget now. We're happy, like in my services, we were just taken back to 2012 levels minus the sequestration, so there's nothing there. And we do the meal service, but that's all they allow us to do. And then whatever I can figure out for transportation.
It's kind of a shame.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's all I have. Pardon me? Sure.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Sure, if you ever, wanna have more discussion about it, I'd be happy to come back.
Say hi to Bill.
I will do that. I'll actually see him tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Move on then to Mary Jane Beeman.
So I can give you these. Whatever it's worth. I think I have more copies than necessary. Well, here we are. We started out in 2010 before the Common Council requesting the approval from the Common Council for the approval of a grant. I guess of what she was saying, it all sounded kind of very familiar of the request of a grant. In fact, the one they requested was actually less than the one that we had requested the city to entertain back at that time. And as you know, the city had approved it at that time and was looking positively toward trails being built in the city of Weyauwega. It was a positive movement. I have had the opportunity to talk to Cheryl about it. Since that time, I realized it would not be the right time for her to maybe be with us or to meet with you, but she does have a lot of insight. She was part of it. Mike, I know that you and Jim were probably the only two that were on city council at the time that was approved. But anyway, it was a positive movement that was made for the city of Weyauwega. And it was wonderful to see. I know that Luther Olson was part of the committee, and I don't even know who else was, but I know that he was part of the committee that looked positively on the fact that Weyauwega could and should have the $275,000 grant that was written at that time, which ultimately, with the projects that were laid forth, would be $347,000. 20% of it, as you know, was to be the responsibility of the city. And I know Nick brought an article from the time that that was written. I guess the grant was written back then. It was in the paper, maybe stating that Weyauwega Trails was going to fundraise for the 20%. That wasn't an accuracy, but it didn't mean that Weyauwega Trails had said at that time we would work with the city. And that's what I feel we have been trying to do since that time. Mead and Hunt, with a representative of Scott Brostow, of course, was hired last August. And since that time, we have attended probably every recreation meeting, numerous meetings, to the point where Kelly said, his guy say, but Dad, can't you stay home with us tonight? And he said, I can't. I have a very important meeting to attend. And, so, you know, we at Weyauwega Trails have given up a lot for this as well. And yet to go home and nothing has really been accomplished. And here we are over a year later, and we still have nothing accomplished. So that's why we're here this evening. We've offered to help, including finance ideas. I realize Scott has been hired. I don't know if it's possible, but we did make the suggestion that since things weren't moving in a positive direction, it being new to the city of Weyauwega to have trails, it's new to Weyauwega Trails to try to have this project going, that East Central Wisconsin Planning has agreed to, offered to. Connie Aubert, who sent the email in the first place, even called Kelly and I in and said, you need to get something written as to how you can work with the recreation department. That was not to be. So we have really been spinning our wheels as well, trying to figure out really what it is our role was to be in this, to make this become a reality. As you all know, well, maybe you don't, Weyauwega has 26 miles of trails that not only just go along a roadside, it also goes back into a woods, and it has been a very successful venture for them. We think of Weyauwega maybe the chain of lakes. It's definitely a tourism area. But as a few months ago, you had a presentation from Bill Zeinert and Dave Teal about tourism, and there's no reason that moving forward in Weyauwega, on a positive note, we couldn't look as trails as something that would bring people to the area, and that they would want to use the trails that we would have in our community as well. We have a beautiful area that we would like to let people know about. I know in the study that was sent out and received back, one of the #1 things on the list was the development of downtown Weyauwega. Maybe trails weren't on the top, but it's kind of like website was way on the bottom too. But those of us that know, if you want to bring people from the outside, you have to have a good website. And I understand, you know, you're being blessed getting that changed. It's been good. It's been good, but it can be improved upon. And I guess you have to have the tools to let people know that we are a progressive community. Not only does Weyauwega have trails, Manawa has trails, Iola has trails, Scandinavia has trails. Security has not been an issue with them. We've spoken to them. In fact, he didn't want to really talk, but he was available at last month's meeting from Manawa. And we presented a nice email from a gal that has been very involved in trails in Weyauwega that said, sure, they maybe had signs that had been sprayed on or whatever, but they have had no major problems at all. So we have point blank asked if the finances were an issue, and we have offered to work with the committee, with you, to try to come about different ways. East Central Wisconsin Planning, again, said they have different ways. I thought it was very interesting listening to Mrs. Gonwell, because you know, they had to come up with creative ways too to raise the money. I don't think it's fair to believe that Weyauwega Trails, a small group, should come up with all the money, because all we're trying to do is make the community that you represent better and more appealing, and for all the reasons that the grant was approved. It was approved in 2010. They've asked people to come numerous times to the meetings. And I guess after a while, it's like one more meeting, and I understand exactly what they're talking about. I don't know, is there anything that you'd like to add to that, Kelly?
May I ask you what you are specifically asking for?
This
from-
evening?
From the city, yes, please.
Okay, this evening, our vision would be, because the clock is ticking, it has, things have just been spinning and spinning and spinning, but nothing has really happened. And this is a 2010 to 2014 grant. If something, but in the words of Scott Brasto, if I'm incorrect, Pat, you please correct me. If something isn't done soon, I know working at the telephone company, the freeze time usually you figured was November 15th. He talked about something needs to be done by October because they need to get all the permits and what have you. I think we need to be talking positively. I think the positive talk has to come from the city council. I really do, to instill that in the community, that it's worthwhile and that you would like to see it happen. And it took about 2 to 3 weeks for Bob Anibus and myself to get all the information together that we did for Cheryl to even apply for the grant. I feel we probably have a month, maybe a month and a half tops. If we could actually work with someone, whether that be Scott, Pat, whomever, but if we could work diligently with the maps that were created a long time ago, that another lake, we could look at another lake to have a trail built, and we could utilize the grant, because it does have to be a minimum of $200,000.
Project does.
The project does, the whole project does. That would mean if nothing is done, of course, Scott will have to be paid from something, it won't be from the grant. The park will not be improved at all. So there won't be any moving forward on it at all. So we're asking if we could work with someone that would really want to positively move forward with trails in Weyauwega.
Are you asking that from a financial support standpoint?
To work with someone, yes, and we've brought some proof tonight. It was also noted in the paper, that's not Angie's fault. It was definitely our vision, as was stated at the Recreation Committee, and I believe you have that. Now, is this the time to mention that? As long as we're there, anyway, that we would bring proof of financial support in the community.
When we get to the item, then
Okay,
that's good.
that's
Yep.
what, okay.
Yep.
And that's basically what Connie Hebert wanted you to get in writing?
No, the Recreation Committee did,
Right.
yeah.
What did Hebert?
What Connie wanted us to do was just to try to figure out how to work
Better together.
with the Recreation Committee, how we could work together.
Okay. I have a few comments. You know,
You really want to keep this to questions. The comments
Well-
would be when we talk about the project. I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but
Keep it
really
on
it's
track.
more questions if you have questions for Mary Jane, because if there's other people, and now that I said that, there won't be anyone else that wants to speak, but right now, the big thing is questions. The comment part
well,
would
it's more of
probably
a
be better
fact,
for that.
it's sort of like, I can pose it as a question.
Yeah.
After we hired Scott, is he at a dead end with anything? We say work with them, but is he not in the whole process at dead ends where, is he like not able to do anything right now because of dead ends, not because of cooperation with the city?
I would
or-
have absolutely no idea the answer to that question. Maybe Pat could answer
Yeah,
that.
I can, basically, he does whatever the rec committee or the council tells him to do. And so we'll get into, I was just taking some notes to
Okay.
make sure I get into everything, but everything he's been told to do ends up in a dead end, I guess, for lack of a better word, and then he comes back
That's
somewhere else. And then there's a dead end per se, and
But then there isn't the opportunity, you know, we have gone, as you would know that, Bruce, we have gone a couple of times without really getting any direction as to what our role is. That has been the biggest frustration for at least the past year, not knowing when we were asked to be a part of it, which I feel was, I felt that was fine, willing to give our time if something positive comes from it or something comes from it. But without any direction as to what it was we were supposed to be doing. When he came to a dead end, like at Mill Pond Circle, we went and looked for another project, and we came up with one. And then another thing came up, and we tried to work with it without knowing what it was we were supposed to be doing. And the more, it seemed like the more we tried to do, the more adversity we were met with. And
Are you saying adversity from council or adversity from the reality of?
recreation committee. So I think that's why we're here tonight, to see where we go from here. And where you would like us to go, if anywhere. And it would seem that if the decision made in 2010 to apply for the grant, some people thought Weyauwega needed the grant and they could benefit from trails in the community, that at that time it seemed like it was kind of a done deal. We would just kind of move forward with it. And so to have to keep going over and over and explaining why we need trails, it's like, been there, done that. Let's just work to get the project done. And like I said, it wasn't till last month that we really understood that the issue was money. And to, well, I need to back up, I guess. I started to say about Angie was not incorrect in putting in the paper that we were going to have, we called it a petition, but not, it wasn't intended to be like a petition, but something because we were to prove that there was financial support for trails in the community. Something that people could sign their name to and say if they wanted to, I guess, appropriate a certain amount of money toward trails, that they would be willing to do so. But then, as we found out, Jim Taylor had told us before we even got the grant, and I gave the email to Pat, that Jim Taylor was supportive of this. He was all in favor of a grant. But now somebody else has joined forces there, and he is not in favor of it. So that changes kind of the whole scope of things with that leg of things. But anyway, that's where we're at. Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have Fred Raschke.
I think he stepped out.
Okay. This is no, and Tim Pochatz. Everything to say?
Only if there was something, I am on the rec committee, and if anybody had any, if I was asked any opinion on anything that went on there.
Okay. All right.
Do you have anything to add, Jim?
Okay, and Jane did a great job of explaining, the situation and where we're at with it.
Okay.
Then we will move on. Any other guests that want to speak? We'll have the Finance Committee.
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I make a motion to recommend approval of the Clean Water Fund Administration Agreement with request that Cedar Corp provide itemized charges on their invoices going forward for follow-up on the actual charges to the city for services provided.
I'll second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments?
let's make a comment. This is for the wastewater treatment plant financing mechanism. Basically, the Clean Water Fund is a loan through the state that you can get money, decent interest rate on this type of project. The second half of this request is, a lot of times when the bills come through in this committee, the Finance Committee sees the bills, Cedar Corp, if you have like $100,000 project that they're working on, they will just bill you project, $100,000. And there's not really a good breakdown on this many hours to see, what you're paying for. You kind of get an idea of what you're paying for, but there's a little left to the imagination there. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way at all, it's just the way it is. And also, when they give us a couple of quotes, or their agreements here, there's two sides to this agreement. What they're pitching is, we will help you get the Clean Water Fund loan, and we will also help you with the user charges, which is what we will pay the loan off with on the back end. So they'll do some rate studies and make sure that we have enough revenue coming in to pay the loan. One of the topics, which I believe is the Clean Water Fund, they give you a solid number, and they say, I think it's $3,500 is what it'll cost. On the user charges, they give you a range, and they say it'll cost between this and this. And that's where they bill you hourly. But through the method they use to bill, you never really find out, unless you look at the total, did we pay the low end of that range or do we pay the high end? So the request is, and it's been sent through to Cedar, provide more detail in your bills. And they've given me, for the City Hall project, they've done some work to get us to the public info phase. They've given me a sample of what they foresee to be itemized bills. You'll see that, and it'll come to finance, and if we need more detail, they'll give us more. If we need less, we can go from there. There'll certainly be more information, though, and that's going to be positive.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I make a motion to recommend approval of checks 29630 through 29820 totaling $261,575.87, and the monthly financial statements.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or comments?
The other comment I'll make is you'll want to do a roll call vote on this item.
We have no other questions or comments, and I'll ask for a roll call.
Gunderson,
Aye.
Sandro,
Aye.
Allenstein,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Carried with 5 ayes.
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I make a motion to recommend approval of tax incremental financing service agreement with Ellers and Associates.
I'll second
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the tax increment financing service agreement with Ellers Associates. Any questions or comments?
Let's make a quick comment. This is not to approve the establishment of a TIF district, but to approve the investigation into whether one would be beneficial. Agri-Peer has talked about doing some expansions. We don't know yet what that would be, but it would involve eliminating some blighted properties that are very close to them, blight is a technical term. It doesn't have any negative connotations on what a person's property really looks like. Blight is the term that enables TIF. Ellers is going to take a look at what Agri-Peer may plan to do, what types of projects the city may have that could be upgraded in that neighborhood on the north side of the city. And by approving this, that gives them the green light to work on this for the next 8 to 10 months. I think their deadline is the end of 2014, and Agri-Peer is looking in the next 2 years to do something there.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else, Seth?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of East Alfred Street agreement for engineering services.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the East Alfred Street agreement for engineering services. Any questions or comments?
I'll just make a quick comment. This is, as the county's reconstructing County F, they're starting next summer. This agreement is for the water and sewer utilities to be reconstructed in concert with that project.
When you say
Yes.
when you say reconstructed,
Yep.
what do you mean by reconstructed? Are you talking about tearing out and?
Yep. Putting in a new road all the way out to, I believe it's all of County F. And it's all the way out to Gills Landing. There'll be a better paved shoulder when they redo the road. It's a good time, since it's gonna be torn up, that we can lift up and take a look at our water and sewer utilities there, because the big expense is digging, and the county's already gonna be doing the digging to help us out, so.
Well, that's just gonna go up to the city limits.
No,
right?
no, it's a county project, so this agreement is only for the water and sewer in the city, but the county is taking all of County F all the way out to Gills Landing. And they said they will be cognizant of the fish runs, so they'll be sure to keep the road open when people need to get in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The second motion, I'm gonna take back the committee with me, we're not quite ready yet, are we?
I'll give an update on it. Basically, the bids were open, and I guess if you wanna read it, you might as well just read what it is.
Alright.
You can act on it, because that'll be part of the record then, so yeah, you can make that motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to direct staff to meet with Pure and Tellers to discuss ramifications of the increased project costs and potential options to assist in funding of the WWTF project, and also meet with the city attorney regarding the alternate deduct bids to ensure the city is able to consider or accept any quote that best benefits the city with the city council for review and potential approval.
I'll second.
I'll go through it all here very quickly. Okay, as part of the wastewater treatment plant project, the city had identified some of the equipment that has to be replaced. What we did is we took a look at cheaper options up front that have more operating costs over the life of the project. So 20 years out, we end up paying more for the cheaper equipment up front. We have our belt filter press, which treats the sludge, gets the water out of the sludge. Right now, it's a manual process where we need a guy sitting on it every time we run it, closing off the machine, making sure it doesn't back up. I won't go into any more detail than that, but the more expensive option up front is a rotary press, which is self-contained. It doesn't need our guy sitting on it. It doesn't need as much water. More up front, I believe it's up to maybe $100,000, $200,000 more up front, but over the life of the project, it actually saves us about $100,000, so it's cheaper in the long run. That's an extra cost among some other things that had been increased, that when the estimates were put together in 2011 and the service agreement was reached with Agri-Peer on their share of the project, the cost went up a little bit from that. And we met with them today, talked to them about, the reason we're building the plant is because they're going to have more flow coming to us, and we want to formalize what that looks like over the next couple of years, because as they send us more material, they're paying us more money. So that will help offset any of the debt that we have there. Working with Ellers, because they are our financial consultant, they can take a look at the ramifications for this Clean Water Fund loan. Are there any other, maybe TIF can help offset some of the costs with the treatment plant, because the treatment plant benefits Agri-Peer. The TIF is going to involve Agri-Peer. So that's why we would bring in Ellers to look at, how do we finance a project that's a little bit more expensive than had been planned all along. And then the third thing is to meet with the city attorney regarding alternate deduct bids. The alternate deduct bid is, the whole project came in at X number of dollars, about a little over $5 million. If we would take out all of the options that we had identified as being helpful and cost effective, the cost comes down about $700,000 up front. The problem is one of the low bidders either didn't include all of the contingency, there was something that they had potentially missed with their bid, but 20 minutes after the bid opening, they weren't there, they emailed Thad and said, oh, we meant to clarify this one point here. The reason why we're gonna deal with city attorney is to make sure that the city doesn't accept or reject a bid in error. And the language on the very end is to make sure that the city can consider or accept any quote that best benefits the city. Well, if it's gonna be a favorable bid, we don't wanna automatically reject it if we don't have to. So really, the committee didn't take any action on the bids for the project to move it forward. You have to, because the original timeline was, we would break ground in October, get all the buildings built out so that the crews could work over the winter inside. So I would anticipate that we probably would have a special city council meeting in the next week or two. Agri-Peer is gonna get us more info on what their plans are for expansion, how much their flow is gonna go up, how much they're willing to basically pay us or pay into this project, because like I said, 54% of this benefits the operations that they do. Them being in business and operating efficiently helps out the community because they're putting people to work and providing tax base. So basically, we're gonna take it back, deal with the 3 stakeholders here that we identified, and then we'll probably have a special meeting in a week or 2 when we get all that information together. I promised that was gonna be quick, but it was thorough, if nothing else.
Any questions or comments?
If we accept that delayed bid that wasn't complete, does that open a Pandora's box for others who have bid to file a grievance that we didn't accept their bid?
And that's what we're checking on. That's what we're checking on. And they're both aware, they were both immediately aware of what happened. And I think if either one was in the other shoe, they would see it differently than they see it in their current position. Because it really does, I think, determine which contractor we pick for which work. So just wanna make sure that everything's on the up and up. And
So we wanna vote on this, or do you wanna?
well, it's basically just direct staff. So what you're doing is when you vote on this motion, you have it in the record, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It's important to have things documented that we open bids on September 10th, but if you don't act on this until, usually they're only good for so many days. At least it shows, hey, contractor already called and said, hey, what's going on? What's the city doing? Well, this is an official action that I can tell them, hey, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, but you know what, I'll tell you what I don't like about it. It's always a last minute deal. Well, it's gonna be up in 10 days or 15 days, and we gotta have a decision made.
Oh, no, not at all. You actually have 60 days from September 10th. So you have until mid-November. And the only reason why I say I would probably encourage a special meeting is just assuming that we get all the info that you need to make a decision, so nothing will be rushed to you. You'll get all the info, and if we don't have all the info, we'll push it back, because we have 60 days. So this is too big of a project to just ram through.
Right.
And that's, actually, this motion is a motion to not ram this through. It's to say, hey, let's sit back, take a look at, are we on the right track with this project, with where the costs came in? Are we prepared to pay for this? And were the bids legal? Nothing else, you have some time there. And right now, it's a really kind of a dream or a goal to start in October, but if we can't get started in October, we'll start whenever we're ready to start. Right now, we're not, so.
No, I agree with you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Let's call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right. like to make a motion to recommend approval of bid including alternative for tank cleaning through LC United at a quote price of $171,500.
Is that all of them? All the tanks? You talking about the water tower?
This is the
That's
one
just
that
one.
sits in the yard waste site, Industrial Park East.
That one?
Yeah.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a comment, of course. This is for the rehab on the water tower that sits in the yard waste site. When, I guess you'll remember, it wasn't that long ago, I was talking about the alternatives for the treatment plant. When we bid it out, the project was for all these extras we put in. Not extras, but they were beneficial extras. Things that you could take out if you needed to. This project was bid out as a total tank painting for the water tower, so they'd repaint the whole thing. And I'll give the credit to Jared in the Public Works Department. He said, hey, wait a minute, we just painted this tank 7 or 8 years ago. Typically, they're under warranty for 15 years, which means they're good for about 20 years. These tanks have to be inspected every 5 years. So, because of Jared's foresight to look into there and say, hey, do we really need this to be painted? He had said, what if we just clean it or power wash it with like a chlorine? That's what the alternate is, and that saves 50 grand on this project. So instead of being a $220,000 renovate the inside of the tank, paint the whole thing, it's going to be a cleaning. It'll be just as good because the painting was really only going to be another coat. It wasn't going to be blasted off and then repainted. That we can do 7 to 10 years from now, because like I said, every 5 years we'll be at those tanks. So really, that's a very good catch by staff that, hey, we don't have to repaint this. That's $50,000 in our pocket. Well, that's not going out the door, I guess is a better way to put it.
So nothing done on the inside?
It's actually a full revamp on the inside.
On the inside and then power washing on the outside?
Yep, yep. And they've got to install some equipment in there that's going to involve cutting the exterior of the tank. So they got to cut holes to mount some hardware on the inside. There'll be some painting done there, but it's real minor. The rest of it, if you look at it, it looks like a mold underneath the bulb, or it looks like a black. That's what they'll be cleaning off, because the paint is actually in decent shape, and it's under warranty.
So if the paint starts blowing off, that's under warranty?
Yep, the inside will be repainted.
When they're powered.
Right, and the inside is fully being painted, so even if the outside is not as good, the inside is for sure being revamped and renovated, so everything's good on the inside.
When they shut that tank down for that, is that gonna be a good time to plan a preventative maintenance activity on that tank?
And that's really what this is, because it's a rehab of the whole tank there. The bid and the project itself is a tank rehabilitation, so that's really what we're
You
doing.
go through everything?
Yep, yep, which we're required to inspect and go through every 5 years. This is a full-blown
Okay.
project. Okay.
And we feel like we have to power wash the outside, right?
Yeah,
Right? Is that,
yeah. And what's also pretty good is I believe we had 6 or 7 bidders on this project, so there was a lot of people. It was a competitive process, which was good.
I commend Jared for having the forethought to look into that.
Absolutely.
Make sure they
Absolutely.
passed on to him.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments? We'll ask for a roll call on that.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Brunner,
right,
Allenstein,
Aye.
Sandro,
Aye.
Gunderson.
Aye.
5 ayes, carried.
Anything else, Nick? Okay. Police, fire, and ambulance?
no action for council.
Okay, thank you. Public health and relief? Doesn't say anything on here, I don't believe. Nope. Okay. Recreation committee. Donna?
You want wanna start, or should I start?
Well,
with
read,
the
I
motion?
think if you read the motion,
Okay.
I'll give you an update on that, and then we
Okay.
can.
Motion to recommend staff and consultant pursue alternate trail easement on former Wolf River storage property. To recommend trails provide evidence of financial support from the public for this project. And to forward all of this information to the city council for review and possible action at the September 23rd meeting.
I will hit on those points.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you.
We'll hit on those topics. That's what we've been doing at the committee, give an update, and then see where we're at. This has not, to my knowledge, been brought to the city council since the approval to seek out the grant and identify the consultant. As long as I've been here, it hasn't gone to the council. It has been, I don't have a good word, a challenge is probably a good word, to get something that you could get buy-in from property owners, to get a map for a trail, to bring to the council to vote on. So that's, if nothing else, it's been an interesting experience in committee, and I'll leave it at that. The problems we've been having, the initial grant, or the initial project was for 3 legs, and maybe 4 legs, but 3 areas of the city. One is in the community park, southwest corner of the city, pave the existing trail that goes through the park, and then I think extend it out to Clark Street is the addition there. The southeast corner would start off of Lincoln Street by Cap Services, run directly to the east, behind the radio tower that's there on the Wolf River storage property, behind the healthcare center, go to the city line, and then there's a maintenance trail as part of the Alfred Street project that runs into the town. And then our trail would run through the city, to the city limits, and it can't go out of the city limits, so it would end there, pick up on the maintenance trail to get to East Alfred Street. So that's the idea with that area. The third leg would be the northwest area, out to Mill Pond Circle. There's a couple different train crossings there. If people want to walk to town or get out, get to school, they have to walk on AA, which is certainly not safe. The problems we've had, the Mill Pond Circle, there's actually 2 property owners that were not willing to grant an easement or indicate that they were willing to grant an easement. Basically, Scott Bristow has been not garnering an official easement, but at least testing the waters with property owners. He's not part of the process down the road to actually purchase and negotiate for people's property. Scott has been in touch with property owners. One just to the west of 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue comes to a stop at a property. It's because that property owner doesn't want the road to go through. They own, it's 12 to 15 acres, I think. The trail was suggested to, I believe, pick up on 3rd Avenue in that area, run along the railroad tracks, get out to eventually Mill Pond Circle. That property owner had said, I think we needed about a 700-foot run, 20 feet wide for an easement. I believe the answer was, well, I won't sell you that, but you can buy my whole property. And the cost was probably $300,000 to $400,000. We didn't ask what the cost was, because as soon as you ask, the cost goes up. Unbeknownst to me at the time, the next property owner over has 25 acres. Right at the AA crossing, there's storage sheds there. That property owner also said, I'm not for this, but you can buy my 25 acres. And I believe right now it's on the market for $400,000. So
He's trying to sell the whole place.
yep. So they really both are. Sandwiched in between there, the city owns a tract of land that we're trying to, and I say attract, T-R-A-C-T, not attractive land, it could be, but we can't get to it. The problem is we never followed up with the second property owner because the first one was not willing to work with us. So the next option that had been brought up at committee, and I believe the Trails Group had suggested it, or someone from the Trails Group, maybe it was Bob, had said, well, what about some type of a condemnation on that property? You can take that property, through a process that gets a fair price, but it's at least an option to get the property there. At the time, I was concerned about the time limit because that takes a couple years to do that, and as Mary Jane mentioned, this project is on a time limit. I had since then talked to the DOT and I said, look, really this section is at a standstill. Can we use an eminent domain or basically condemn the land? And they said, well, no one's ever successfully done it, basically because of the time limit involved. And they weren't sure that you could do that. You know, you wouldn't be able to acquire the land, you wouldn't be able to move forward on the project, and you would run into your deadline and then pass that. So they sort of said, well, good luck if you want to do that. After that, the committee had recommended modifying the grant because it had those 3 areas on the trail project. Modified the grant to take that section off and to look for a new one. And I believe it was the Trails group at the committee had said, what about going to the school district and looking at creating a loop with the backyard trail? That turned out to be a dead end. I'll use a word that was used before. There's a couple things there. The state had said that you cannot hook up with another unpaved trail. With this project, you have to create a trail that loops. So we basically have to pave a full circle through the school property, come out on East Alfred Street somewhere. I don't know that the school board officially voted on the request, but the message passed to me was, well, they're not so sure that they're for that type of an allowed activity on the property. In the end, we didn't pursue that because the DOT said, well, it doesn't matter because unless you pave that backyard trail, you're not going to be able to do this plan. That was essentially a dead end. The next, really there was not another leg identified. We really started to bog down in the last couple months. We have the southern legs. We tried the northwest portion in the Mill Pond Circle. We tried the northeast early section by the school. Neither one of those were really benefiting at all. Within the last month or two, before the last Recreation Committee meeting, we were left with the trail section of the park, the trail section down by Cab Services, Wolf River Storage. It was passed along to me that perhaps, as Mary Jane mentioned, the ownership group for the former Wolf River Storage property perhaps wasn't fully on board with the easement for the proposed path was to go right down the middle of their property. So they have where that Wolf River Storage building is. They also have quite a bit of land, and most of the land south of the radio tower. The easement would basically permanently put a trail right through the middle of their property. I was notified that Bob Ehrenberg would be the contact to work with. I worked with him, and he said, well, here's the concern. Basically cuts the land in half. That was at the last rec committee meeting. We talked about, well, we need to meet a minimum cost for this project. With the southern 2 legs, we were right at $200,000, which is what you need. We couldn't just go pave the park because we didn't meet the requirements of the grant. I believe it was Bob Annabis again had suggested, well, we had gotten, or the city and the Trails group, or maybe just the Trails group, had gotten some support as part of the grant application from Jim Taylor, and it said, I'm supportive, I'd be willing to give some land. With that, the question was posed back to the ownership group, how about not an easement across the middle of your property, but what about all the way around the outside? That would certainly add cost to the project, it would certainly meet the minimum for the project. That's back to this motion that was made here. Consult, or have staff and the consultant pursue the alternate trail easement on the former Wolf River Storage property. That came back to me as being something that's not going to work out. It said, we're not on board as an ownership group with that plan. Backing that up, the Weyauwega Healthcare Center is directly to the west. We thought, well, maybe we don't have to go all the way to the Wolf River Storage property. Maybe we can cut it short. They have some concerns. Both of their driveways are on the areas that we would cut up on their property, and they said we don't want any more people, they already have a real tiny driveway that fits almost only like one car. They don't want any extra people, you know, I don't know that it's appropriate to call it a trailhead, but it would be an outlet of the trail on the East Elfront. They're not really in favor of that. So what are you left with? You're left with, in that section, perhaps you circle cap services and you just go around the block there with a trail. I don't think, after speaking with Scott, our consultant, he said, well, it doesn't look like that's enough of a cost to meet the minimum floor. He didn't say you couldn't do it, but he said you'd need more, which we've been looking to do with the school property, what have you. That's the answer for an alternate easement. The ownership group had said, we're not comfortable because we don't know what our future development plans are for the property. Putting the trail through their property or around it starts to define it for them, and the word that was used was, well, it might restrict the use of the land. That's certainly a sensible answer. That's what I'm going off of, is that's not gonna work for an easement in that corner of the city. As I talked to the DOT, I'd been in touch with them a couple times in the last couple of weeks. They had called and wanted to know where our project was at. And they said, well, you know, obviously through the winter, you're not gonna be doing a whole lot, so what are you doing to prep for the winter? I ran basically through everything that we've done every month at every meeting. I've gone through with them, you know, we've run into problems with property owners granting easements. And the DOT understands that, because if the city doesn't own the property, someone has to be willing to allow a trail there. Now, where I'm from, in Green Bay, Weyauwega, we run into those problems all the time. The problem is the city or the municipalities went and bought the property. And that's something that's an option for the city to consider potentially. I don't know if that's feasible or not. So, having said that, the DOT further explained to me the reasons why they feel that we got the grant. And the reason number one was the Mill Pond Circle, getting people off of AA, getting them to walk from Mill Pond Circle through some type of a safe area into town. The number two reason was the grant application had, I believe what they said was, I thought it was like mind-blowing number of people that would be, I guess trips is what it was called. And they said, wow, this is for a small community, this is a lot of trips, this is gonna have some benefits. So the big things were, cut it down at Mill Pond Circle, gets people off the AA, you know, safety there, and then a lot of people would be using it. So having said that, I asked the DOT, I said, well, what about the condemnation? That's where we had the conversation about, should we be doing that to be able to save the grant project and really, you know, fulfill the number one priority that the DOT had? And maybe they didn't tell us that's why they got it, but they told me, and I don't know. Because any change that we put on here from tonight, and I know I'm rambling on, but I'll start to redirect a little bit. Any change that the city puts on the grant project has to be reviewed by the DOT. And the DOT told me, you know, you got the grant for these safety and volume numbers that you propose with the project. And there's a lot of communities that were very qualified to receive the grant. We got it over them. And they said, you have something going there, you should really be emphasizing the safety and you know, providing safe routes to school without using those terms, because that's another program. The other topic that came up in the committee when we sort of looked like, when it looked like we were looking at dead ends with every option that we had, at one point our consultant had asked about sidewalks and had said, as long as you had suitable bike trail or bike route on the road, perhaps the DOT would consider allowing a sidewalk right next to that bike trail. I was in on a teleconference call where that was said by the DOT. And because I was with a higher up in the last week or two, I asked the question. I said, well, if we can't get this property from these property owners, what about sidewalks? We can certainly put a route in the easement or in our right-of-ways. And DOT said, you did not apply for sidewalk funding. And if you would have had sidewalk funding in your grant application, you wouldn't have even been considered. So basically sidewalks are out. What they did say was, well, if you can get a wide enough easement where you were gonna put a sidewalk, maybe you can put a trail there. Problem is you need about a 25 or 20-foot wide section of somebody's property. Usually we only have about 15 feet. So we'd still have to buy up, and we wouldn't be able to just put in a trail where we wanted it. We'd still have to go and get permission from property owners.
When you go after an easement like that, and you ask the property owner for easement, are you asking them to give that up to you free?
No. What you're asking at this point,
What do you pay them for that privilege to
you
have? their-
negotiate that down the road.
You draft a 100-year lease?
We didn't get there yet, but
But normally?
I think it might even be longer than 100 years. I think it's like an indefinite, until you wanna give it up, you have it.
So he does get the people do get something out of it to allow their land to be used for that, correct?
They get a fair price if they want it. They get the opportunity to negotiate. The question was, well, what if someone wanted to donate their land? They could, but you wouldn't know because you can't go out and say, hey, can we get your free land now? You can only get an idea or a sense of whether we can use their land. Down the road, we would have to hire a new consultant as part of the process. He would then go and formalize all the easements. So the key there, and I'm glad you brought that up, the Wolf River Storage property at first, maybe a couple years ago, had said we would be willing to have a trail here. Because of the nature of the process, they're not locked in on that. And that's unfortunate because then you have the opportunity for something like this to happen in the last couple of months where we don't have them locked in for a trail route, so they can change their mind. So my notes were a little bit here and there, so I'll bring it back to, basically we can't get an alternate easement in the southeast corner of the city. The next topic, which I believe has been one of the points of contention, if the committee has not been frustrated with the numerous dead ends with locations and legs, the topic's been financing. How are we gonna pay for this? The city has the grant, and the grant covers 80% of the project cost. It doesn't cover buying the land. I think the amount that was estimated for someone to be paying, perhaps the city, was like $70,000. The city put the project in the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. They put it out there as a project that they'd like to get taken care of. The problem, which I've said to the Finance Committee and a couple other committees, is we don't budget and match up our budget money with the CIP. We could, but because we don't, you have the flexibility to spend your money as you wish. For this project, unfortunately, when the grant and the project was approved, the money wasn't totally committed to this project at the time by the city. I can also tell you that when I looked through the old records from 2010, I didn't have any, short of minutes that said, we talked about the trail, we talked about the grant, we talked about the project. That's all that's in the folder. There's nothing that says, city's gonna pay this. There was a news article perhaps that says the city would pay, but the Trails Group would help reimburse that amount. I don't know. All I know is that the money is not strictly committed by the city to pay $70,000 or whatever the cost is going to be. That's been a point of contention. Who's responsible for coming up with the city or non-DOT grant share? And that's where the request was made to the Trails Group to provide evidence of financial support from the public for this project. I can add, City Hall had a Trails coin container, and we counted up today, we have $11.04. So, we have $11. That's on my end. The third question, or the third topic in this motion, really gets this out of committee because we haven't gone anywhere with the committee. The city council really needs to vote. You have time with this project if you wish to pursue it. You cannot get an extension on the grant up until the day it's due. So you can't actually ask until the day it's due. Say, can we get an extension? The state, they want to make sure that you've done everything you can to get the project moving and going. I think we've done a lot to try to get the route identified. That's been the hang-up. You can't build the trail until you know where it's going to go, and you can't know where it's going to go until you get the proper permission and approval from the property owners. Having said that, and having said a lot, I'm sorry, it's a complicated, I don't know the good word, but it's been complicated, it's been contentious. It's here at the city council because the city council can vote to move forward with the project, or they can vote to not. That's really what's before you.
I don't know, it's like opening up a can of worms. You can't do this until you do that, you can't get this done until this gets done.
Yeah,
And it's
but
just-
because part of the grant is federal money, a lot of times they'll give you that money, it's not free money for sure, but when they give you that money, you also have a lot of stipulations that go with it. And I do know Weyauwega is very similar to Weyauwega, where I came from. They don't, they probably got some grants, but they also make their trails more narrow because they could fit it into property that they have. If you decide that you don't want to move forward, I don't think that kills trails in the community. I think, like I mentioned, we have the flexibility to go in the right-of-way, and you can build a smaller trail. You don't have to go 10 feet wide and have certain drainage and all that.
Well, let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
When you build trails, that is governed by the state of Wisconsin, am I correct?
That depends on where you get the money from. And in this case, you're getting the money through the state via the federal government.
Because I go to Stevens Point every once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a beautiful trail program out there.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through parks, it goes along the highway, and people walk on it, people ride bikes on it, and I don't know, apparently, from just viewing it and looking at it, seems like they got things done over there, but I don't know how old the trails are. They might be 15, 20 years old, or even older.
No.
Well, it sounds to me, Jim, like they would have a much better chance at developing their trail and going forward if they could get commitment from 2 property owners going out towards Mill Pond Circle, correct me if I'm wrong? 2 property owners?
The one question, if I can add this at this time, the one question that came up from Cheryl, she said in dealing with the railroad, she thought there was a possibility. Now Scott said in talking to somebody else that's had the opportunity to work with the railroad in the past, but they are very difficult. And I'm not trying to pin Cheryl to it, but she's the only one that really had an involvement with it, so I thought, why not talk to her? And I don't know that avenue has been explored at this point to see about going on the railroads right of way. And I guess, what Pat has mentioned here, let's try this area or let's try that area, and kind of to allude to what you're saying, Jim, it's like, you're absolutely right. We would go out and kind of get this project, and then it takes a while to go through it, and the engineer it would take a while. And I guess at this point, that's what I'm saying, that, we didn't have any communication with them, and I'm not trying to overstep our bounds, but the whole communication thing and trying to come up with a trail, there was kind of a whole plan that Bob Anavis, when he was very involved in the trails before he got disillusioned, had made of the city. So it isn't like these are the only potential places, but it can't just keep spinning the wheels, as we're saying here tonight. So I don't know.
I can make a comment about the railroad. The railroad, the question was brought up at committee
It was discussed.
because, half of what I'm gonna say was discussed. Because we have to be so far off the railroad, I believe it's 25 feet off of the railroad, you had to go through this guy's property. So the idea was, can you get off of his property and get close to the railroad? The railroad basically said no. And on a similar dealing, I know Mr. Mayor is familiar with this. There's a property owner on the east end of the city trying to sell a house, and their driveway goes over the railroad. And because of that, the railroad requires certain insurance limits. I believe not too long ago, the insurance was like $1 million coverage or whatever, don't quote me on the amount. But as they're trying to sell the property, the railroad insurance requirements don't stick with the property, they stick with the property owner. And so now, the railroad, because they can, has said, well, we don't want $1 million in insurance, we want 5 to 10 now. And because of that, the people that might have to buy that are having to kick in thousands of dollars towards extra insurance. And it's really not pertinent to this discussion, except because the railroad doesn't have a benefit to Bend, they won't. And they've
I guess we were thinking about the safety issue.
Yeah, and I think
if-
that, and
If somebody,
longer-
because somebody, we've had letters of recommendation that you folks aren't familiar with, that were sent in with it, of one person that was almost killed and another one that had a serious accident, especially on the track that goes, not the one that goes straight over, but the one heading to Lakeview Manor, because it's at an angle, it's such a dangerous.
Well, the one on
spot
double A is
there.
at an angle
The
too.
whole thing.
The safety
yeah.
thing is kind of a double A, or double,
Edge sword,
there you go.
okay.
Not the best,
Okay.
way to, no, I'm kidding. The railroad doesn't want people close to the railroad tracks. And if it was up to them, nobody would come anywhere near the track. So, yes, you're getting people off the road, but then you're also allowing people to be closer to the tracks. That's
Well,
kind
you
of where
thought
they're at.
I mean, the other things that we've talked about is like the fencing and, things like that.
And those are all things they require anyway. And because they can, they will, and they don't want to bend on their 25-foot.
But anyway, I
Clearance,
guess
yeah.
for tonight's meeting, I guess we're just looking at
Mr.
the
Zavoy has a comment.
Mr. Mayor's running the meeting. Yep. All right.
Just a question, because Edie and I have talked about this. When Mill Pond Circle was built, isn't there an easement for the utilities someplace going across those properties?
Just the utilities, and it goes straight, it's 3rd Avenue extended, straight to the west.
Is there a possibility of looking at
It's an underground easement. It doesn't include anything above ground at all.
underground? Okay.
And I confirmed that with Thad, because he said, if I only would have pushed harder. Basically, it sounds like he did all he could to get that easement.
Okay.
And because it was underground, that was kind of the final.
Well, I know it was
Sales pitch on
contentious
that.
at the time when that easement was
Right.
brought in to begin with, and I thought, man, if that's there, that
Yeah.
would be a golden opportunity. I did not realize it was just
Yeah.
underground, so.
And really, and not just because I live out there, but because I see that intersection with the railroad tracks. We talked about at committee that if you wanted to go through some type of a condemnation, if that was ever the option, that you'd wanna maybe take one big effort at extending 3rd Avenue, extend the road out there. So maybe you don't even cross the railroad tracks, you could just stay south of them. And if you go through to build a road there, which is a big expense, I don't mean to say we'll build a road to get a trail on the road, but it's certainly something you could add on there. Because it is needed. I mean, I don't think anybody's disputing that you need something there. It's how much are we gonna pay to get it? And to get those two properties, it sounds like $1 million just for the property.
But nobody's asked the question yet, have they?
Well, I think they did, but I think the question was asked by our consultant, are you willing to give the easement? And the answer was, yes, buy all my property. And the city's not really in the residential real estate business, And so I think in a way they did ask the question, but when the answer was buy my whole property, they didn't say how much, and that's where I think once you ask how much, then the price goes up. But
What do
you're
you
right.
have to lose?
You're right.
But,
The
And-
consultant already knew approximately what
He
that
had an
was
idea
valued
about
at.
200,
It's not like-
250,000 is what he said to the committee.
It's not gonna be $20,000, you know,
No,
we can't.
Absolutely, no.
And it's
We
hard
also
for us to
have-
gauge it too, because it's assessed as agricultural land, so we can't go out and say, hey, this is what it's actually worth. It's worth whatever somebody's gonna pay for it, but they're only selling it if they get the number they want, you know.
You were talking about Third Avenue extension and one of the committees, whether it was police, fire, ambulance, I'm not sure, and Jim Bayman was there, I believe, and we talked about, the problem with getting the fire engines out there and ambulance service, and that it really is not a luxury, it should be a necessity, and train blocks, et cetera, and the common sense things that we can see just sitting here.
And they sit there for 45 minutes,
Mhm.
stopped quite a bit, because
Mhm.
my wife lets me know.
And
So
there's
it
the
really
rules.
is something that I was excited when I heard that sure, the trail could come after, but even more so, there's a bigger picture here, and it's neglecting what should have service to it.
Something's gotta happen.
But that doesn't happen,
Well,
just like
yeah,
that, and
no.
the grant thing, you know, it should be, but it isn't yet, and what does it take to get there?
As Bruce was saying, if you gotta have a fire engine going across the tracks, don't they have to stop and break that train?
We have the ability to do that now.
I mean,
When your
I'm
house
just,
is burning, how quick are you gonna get there too, though? I mean, you don't really know until something happens, and I don't mean to live like that, and I say me because I live there and I'm
Right.
aware, but you never know. And similarly, Lakeview Manor is cut off, just like
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
else is, so really, no one's more important than anyone else, I think everyone's just as,
And it's
well,
not,
It's important.
I wouldn't, go ahead,
it's
Frank.
not just fire, it's also ambulance.
Ambulance,
Right.
somebody's
And
having
Because
a
if
heart
there's an
attack.
accident or anything up there,
yeah.
Well,
so,
there's a solution, but I imagine people don't wanna spend the money. Is if, when tracks are crossing, build a tunnel and go underneath. That way a train can run across and you can get to the other side in an emergency. But how much?
Well, that's the same conversation of, are you gonna go build a road and condemn all that land because there's expense there? That's an
Well,
option, but
I-
it's expensive, maybe not as expensive as a tunnel, but still, they're both expensive.
And for
but-
what we have on our plate right now with all the things we even talked about tonight, it's like any budget, how can you,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's,
but it's a good idea, I mean, yeah, under or over, or,
Has anyone taken the opportunity from the map that I provided you, Pat, to look at that, to see what your vision was of any other options of the trails?
And I did not put that in the Google Drive, but it's basically, do you have a copy of it at all? I think I got it on my phone here, but.
I do. And then I don't know necessarily that the school, I haven't talked to Scott about it, but I don't know that they were all necessarily against it. Maybe you know, Frank,
I
or
haven't
Tim,
heard.
do you have any input from the school?
I thought the
We
word
know
back was
that,
no.
we know that it can't go from hard to the
Backyard
wood
trail,
chips.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, but would they even consider going to have another trail along there, or make that a hard trail? And I haven't been back there. I
They
don't know.
received grants for the backyard trail
Mhm.
area, and
Mhm.
so they need to honor the purpose of those grants to keep it a nature trail. So they cannot change the nature of the natural areas that people gave grants
Of that
to
particular,
construct
that
that area,
particular trail.
the wilderness and the trees and the woods and the amphitheater, because people donated towards that. And that's the thing with grants is,
Mhm.
grants come with strings attached. You have to honor the intent of the donor.
Mhm.
This grant, if we were to be able to carry it through, would be a permanent facility for the city. We could not decide, or a property owner could not come to us and say, you know, this is not compatible with putting what, now, you know, the people on the east then sell their property and they have a building and a purpose that now really isn't compatible with the trail there.
The one in
They
the park
could
would
not-
be changed.
Excuse me, they could not change, we could not say, well, then we'll just change a route, or we'll shorten it. We could not make any changes to that trail. And that's why it's understandable to me that anyone who's holding property for development or resale would not reasonably be able to say, I can map a trail through this and know that it's gonna be compatible with a future owner. Because you can't know who that future owner is, or if you're gonna combine that property with adjacent properties and expand it into a bigger development, you won't know, ever, until it's sold. And so I see that as an issue with any of these areas that are mapped out through undeveloped land that might be developed residential, because no one will know exactly where those houses and lots, driveways and.
Donna, if I may ask, how do you think other communities have trails? How do you think they develop them? As I handed this out tonight, telling about the economic value to land, to communities, to have trails, you look at it as this is kind of a detriment because they have trails.
That's not what I said.
Okay,
And I have had an issue when people judge my intentions
well,
and
that's
my
why I'm,
feelings.
yeah.
And I have frankly been very offended when I get a phone call from people who are angry, who have judged my reasons for voting the way I voted, without ever asking me why.
I haven't called you, so I don't know who's
Well,
calling.
I believe I recall a phone call.
For me?
Yes.
No, I have not called you. Well, anyway.
After I voted for a sidewalk, yes, you did.
Oh, well, I just clarified that
No,
sidewalks
it
are
wasn't
not.
a clarification.
Well, anyway.
I voted for a sidewalk to pursue the option of a sidewalk
Mhm.
so that I could maximize, if it were allowed, the money that was allowed for us to receive through this grant. I think all of us have looked at this grant and appreciated the possibility for what this grant and this area could provide for this community. I disagree with the fact that nothing has happened. Because we have hired a consultant, we took one meeting to amend the route, then we waited for him to contact the DOT and get us an answer as to whether we could change the route through the city park. We allowed him to contact property owners, we waited for his responses.
Mhm.
We allowed the committee to come to us with an alternate proposal.
Meaning
We
Weyauwega
did not-
Trails?
Yes,
We didn't even know we were supposed to do that though, Donna.
you came to us with this school route,
We did, because, because there was nothing else
and we
going on.
considered it. We have not sped through this summer in terms of getting easements because of the fact that the DOT had postponed the construction period to next summer. So there wasn't a short, urgent timetable. And I know the committee was frustrated because of that, but we didn't need to have meetings every month so that we could get a construction started in May, because the construction was in the state budget now for 2014. So I disagree that nothing has happened. We have followed the procedures that have been outlined in this grant. We have spent thousands of dollars on this consultant to walk us through this process.
The city has paid for that, and the only reason I bring it up is because it was mentioned before, where's money from? We paid about $5,000 to the consultant, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but just
No,
clarification.
Well, I'd like to add to what you said, that after I heard our administrator tell of all the conversations and phone calls and not telemarket, but
I apologize, I went through that, but it was.
No, you
it
had
was
to,
a
because that-
explanation that
I saw a lot of
it's-
time involved and a lot of answers gotten, so
Mm-hmm.
really, I have to add to that, you heard it too, there has been a lot done, not sometimes what we think.
been a lot of effort. is probably
There has been, and what I'm seeing is,
Not result.
On every-
unless somebody is willing to map out, I'm not sure I could focus on that, but unless we have a whole different, it's dead end, it's dead end northwest, it's dead end southeast, it's okay in the park, but what else do we do? Where else, and is that what that was about? I don't know, is focus on stuff, but, I mean, do we have, does anyone else have land they wanna let it go through? I mean, where else, where?
Like I said,
Cause I don't think
we-
anybody's willing, not willing to try to, but where else you gonna go? Where are we gonna go?
I don't know.
That's
That's
the
what,
thing, that's frustrating
Bruce,
me, where can we go?
you were on the rec committee. Did you feel,
I missed the last one.
Okay.
So that
well,
might have been
I guess,
significant.
you know, we've been asking for a year as to what you want us to do, because we wanted to be there
Here's-
to work with, but we really.
And my answer right now is, you can't do anything, cause we can't do anything, because some owners aren't willing to do anything. And if they're not, and on both of those legs, so you can't do anything, cause we can't do anything.
Not on those, but just as different lakes have been identified,
But what,
you know.
I'm just saying, I'm not quite understanding, because if there's a wall, you can't go through it. What else could we have you do when there's nothing else?
You can go around the wall.
Can I just try to bring this back
How
around
can
to
you
something?
tell a guy that you're gonna go around his, what?
Because we're just going around in circles right now.
Okay.
I wasn't Don in the beginning, okay? But when I read through your grant, it specifically is to eliminate or reduce automobile traffic, which is what Mill Circle Pond did. Any other one that you're suggesting does not fulfill the grant needs. And yet, I mean, but realistically, I mean, what you applied for in the grant was to reduce traffic. You came up with 28,000 one-way trips a year going from Mill Circle Pond for shopping and school. And you had 14,000 for basically the CAP Services Healthcare Center and trailer park site. Majority of this is for automobile reduction. You can't get that with any other lake. A lake behind the school isn't gonna take any traffic off the streets.
Okay.
So I'm saying, essentially, right now, we are at a dead end.
What the, excuse me for clarifying that, but what the grant says is these funds are intended to encourage projects that increase multimodal transportation alternatives, which is exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Then it also says enhance communities and protect the environment.
Right.
So
But
those
you
things.
applied for it on what your grant application said was to reduce automobile traffic. So you pinpointed one section of the grant process and said, this is why we're wanting, this is what we're gonna do. We are gonna reduce traffic.
Mhm.
That is what you said.
I didn't say,
Well,
but it
okay,
was, it was.
then
it
that's
was
what-
said.
That was the approved
That's what Sherry said.
Yeah.
request, that's probably.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so,
then in
And
your.
according to Scott Bristow, any amendments have to be true to the original purpose of the grant.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask Pat then. You're the one that's been conversing with the DOT.
Yep.
Because you are the administrator
Mhm.
of the grant. I guess, what was your feeling?
The DOT told me that the only thing we've officially done is, and actually I should back this up and say, the only request that the council has made is to eliminate the Mill Pond Circle segment of this project. I don't think officially the DOT has done that, and anything that we do has to be submitted for DOT review and approval. And approval is important because they don't just look at it and rubber stamp it, they need to figure out whether or not you qualify. Now, why it's important that the Mill Pond leg hasn't been officially eliminated is because the DOT reps that I dealt with, the very low-level reviewers of this project, had said the project hinges on that section there. And if you go and say, look, we're not doing this anymore, that may not, it may not help us get it approved, because what you could do is say, well, we're gonna do the park, we're gonna do the southeast corner and maybe the school, and the DOT has to review that and say, look, And I don't know that, and the people I talked to at the DOT are insulated from the decision makers, so they didn't really even know, except to say, look, this Mill Pond Circle thing is really carrying a lot of weight. They didn't say it's carrying all of the weight, but they certainly said a lot. So anything you do, maybe the point to be made is we have to get it approved by the DOT. And to come up with a new leg doesn't guarantee that it will still be approved by the DOT. Now, that would be helpful because that's something we haven't been able to even get done ourselves. So I don't mean to, part of why it's probably hard to listen to me from earlier is because it sounds like a lecture in hopelessness, but to me, it's close to that. And I don't mean to say anybody would be giving up because I don't think that's appropriate either. But how are you going to get this done? It hinges on property owners and somehow getting to the Mill Pond Circle leg. I don't mean that you need it, but DOT said, hey, hint, hint, that's going to help.
Mary, according to that, that was the proposal map that you had.
That was before the grant, Mike.
That was quite a bit more than
kind of
the
a
grant.
dream map,
Yep.
Right.
if you will. Yeah.
Right.
Created by
But
Bob.
I guess what I'm looking at is, what I'm thinking is that everybody, I mean, I'm kind of for the trails, but yet we need to know what you're doing, and that's what my recollection is from when we started this. The city would put some money into it as long as the trails were gonna cooperate and put their portion of that
And work
in too.
Together.
They
I
were
guess.
supposed to have monies. Sherry was told at the time, or I should say the administrator at the time was told that she was supposed to start a line item, and as the monies were donated, fundraisers, whatever the case may be, that money was supposed to go into that, and then when we felt there was enough money to do a portion of that project, that's how I think some of those people on that council were thinking. I don't think this was something that we were going to do in a short period. We knew that, and I don't think Weyauwega built theirs in a couple weeks.
What I was told by Aaron in Weyauwega, he said, we couldn't even exist as a recreation department if we didn't have the volunteerism that we have with the groups that we work with. And I would hope that that would be the case, but that, I've never heard that. We just said we would work with the city. I have never gotten really the direction that we needed to come up with this money. I do recall, maybe you can recall this, Mike, because I vividly recall it, that the bathroom project had kind of been, and what you were saying, Pat, about the money isn't really allocated. It may be in recreation, but I recall it being said, well, there goes our bathroom again. If you were going to be funding the trail project, you wouldn't have the money to build this $120,000 bathroom in the park. So, it was, supposed to be built this summer, so as soon as I heard you were going to have this $120,000 bathroom, I thought, now where's the money gonna come from for
I need
the
to,
portion of the trails?
I need to make a comment. None of this is valid. If someone won't sell, or none of this is valid because it is at a dead end. I'm not against, I've worked as much as I could the last 2 years or so, and the city has cooperated. The only thing we could tell you to do is to go out and get $500,000 and buy those 2 properties. And you can't do that. You don't know how, you said go around. If there's a wall, there's no going around.
I just mean a
And so we really don't need to
different
talk about what 2 years ago, because we are at a dead end on the northwest, southeast, and there's silence in the room because there's nothing else to talk about. And I'm not against it. What else can you do?
Can I ask,
What can you do? Somebody finds some land, go out and find some land where somebody else will let it go through. Go ask Dr. Askey that was here, will he let it go through? And then who owns beyond there to go to the east? Will they let it go through and come?
Problem with that is.
There's
it's
nothing
in-
else to
it's
do.
in
you
the
know
what the
town.
problem is?
It's in the town, it's gotta stay in the
Well,
city.
right, and that's what I'm saying, where else can you?
Do you know what the other problem is, Bruce, and I know that you're aware of this, is we can't talk to anybody.
No, there's no,
No,
right
no,
now, there's
we
no
can't
talking.
legally, we can't talk to anybody.
But right now,
That's-
it's not important because
Yeah.
there's a dead end, every end is dead. So you can, we give permission, if we could, for you to talk to everybody, but there's nothing to talk about anymore. Am I wrong? And I'm not against it. I'm frustrated that there's nothing else to talk about.
Let me,
Somebody in the room tell me that it's dead. Those two legs.
I got a question.
Find a new leg, but we don't have a leg to
That-
stand
that-
on.
That's from what I've seen, it's a big trail. Why not downsize it?
I can answer the question for you because I was thinking about this. The grant money is a blessing and a curse with this. It's a lot of money to help you out build the trail, but it also requires that you get 20 feet of land. And like I said, you go to Fleet Farm in Wapaka, get off the highway, the trail's not 20 feet wide of area, it's right on the road. Now, the reason why you're looking out on the far reaches of the city is because where else are you gonna get 20 feet of land that you could just buy and still have property fit into our zoning? It's very difficult to go through the city. I think you can do trails through the city on your own with your own money. The problem isn't that the city is broke or out of money. That's not the problem. Problem is the city's got a lot of worthy projects and not enough money to do them all. And that's really where, I hate to say this, it's your jobs to prioritize. And I think you're doing that. Not saying you're not, but
Yeah, but my question is there enough, like you said, you need 20 feet.
yep.
Is there enough areas in the city limits where you can make a smaller? No.
No.
That's the problem. Where do you want to place this 20 feet? I'm going through in my mind around everywhere in the city, and there is no place to put a paved trail.
Where you
When
don't
someone
need
says
someone
no,
else's
no, no, and no, then there's no place. Well, there's no place to put it. We can talk about all the permission and this and that, but there's no place to put it. And I've been for this all along, to give it a fair shake. Tell me where, go out and talk to somebody tomorrow. If I had the authority, I'll tell you, and I am on the rec committee, go out and then come back and tell me where that actual location is worth pursuing, because right now I see a dead end at every place that is proposed. Where? Tim, where could it go? Tell me, you're totally here because of it, but where could we put it?
The only other place that, you know, I'm not familiar with the legalities and the property ownership out on the north, you know, by Mill Circle, extending out that way. And I know that the part off the end of Clark Street to the park is a great idea. That one,
And
that would
would
fly.
go. Yeah.
And I understand there's been a change in the one behind
The healthcare center.
the healthcare center
Cap services.
that just happened now. Otherwise, that leg would
Right,
have
and
worked.
that's what I'm saying, dead is
Um,
dead. on
The school, behind the school, would work, but it wouldn't be down the nature trail. It would, that, you know, where you could go is off the end of the street there.
East
and-
Street.
But isn't the, and I'm not against finding that, and I'm glad, but we talked about all this, and what I heard was a resounding no, the school isn't gonna let us do anything. That was what I heard back. I'm wrong? Where is there city land that you can go?
To be fair, the school board didn't officially give you a piece of paper that said, we just voted
No,
and
not
said no.
officially.
So I guess. it's a
I'm excited if
possibility
it could
until you
go
get there.
through. If
But
that could go through, that'd be great. Now I'm optimistic again, but somebody's showing me that someone's gonna let it happen.
Okay, and the other ultimate decision will be made at the state DOT level, and it will have to comply with this statement. Provide a realistic estimate of how much the proposed facility will impact usage by estimating how many bicycle, pedestrian users, visitors, or viewers will visit the facility on an annual basis. basis. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities should comprise a significant non-recreational use of the trail for everyday activities such as shopping, work, and school trips in order to reduce automobile usage. I don't see that a route behind the school will qualify those trips to have approval at the state level for a DOT grant. And that's where I think we're in this situation. We are a small town. We don't have a lot of destinations where we're getting a population from point A to point B with automobiles that we will alternately move onto a trail with a trail. And that's the purpose of this grant. That's how they evaluate whether we'll get it or not, whether they will approve our amendments or not. That's why we got it in the first place, because the estimate for that apartment area to the city was such a high number. We don't have that leg anymore. So I think that no matter where your amended proposed legs will land, we won't qualify for this grant.
That one out north of town is really the key to the whole thing.
And that's without a
It
half a
sound-
million.
it sounds like it's the
approximately
biggest
half a million,
need,
it's not,
too,
it's
for the
not
city,
gonna
when you
happen.
start talking about ambulance and fire, and if they're paying city taxes out there, city sewer, city garbage, and you can't get an ambulance there to save somebody having a heart attack, that's a need.
Yeah,
And it's
And
a need.
that could be a liability for the city, if somebody, you know,
and that's.
God forbid, somebody's having a heart attack and there's a train and you can't get an ambulance out there, or a fire and people die and you can't get the fire department out there, that's a problem. You're not protecting the citizens of the city.
Right.
And you know how long it takes to stop a train and move it out of the way? Somebody had brought that up earlier.
It can happen.
By the time they did that, with their best efforts,
Same thing with it.
things would be
Yeah.
done. So,
I understand, that's what I say.
So my question to you would be, would you put $150,000 into a trail? Or would you put it towards a road?
That could be used as a trail to get people in there, because it's,
And you could do that, but that doesn't solve your problem of the property owner not allowing you there. Now, the road is not gonna be done in time for this grant. That doesn't mean it's not gonna be done, you know.
who here could just, who could bring something to the school and see if that, yeah, and it's, may not qualify, but I'd like to, if that's not a leg that can happen either, I'd like to hear it. Can't they put that on their agenda for the next meeting and say yes, no? So at least,
That's the one thing, I guess, as I started out with tonight, just to, maybe it sounds futile, to buy more time, to spend more time, more energy, more meetings, but I guess to see, if we can check out some of those possibilities.
well, all I see is one possibility, is the school even willing, but then again, are they? I mean, let's just ask them.
And just so
We
you
can ask
know,
them.
we were supposed to bring financial support. One of the people that really believe in trails in the community, and I believe that it takes everybody to believe in trails in the community, that one individual, sent an email today and said, I won't be able to make the meeting, but I would be willing to fund $10,000.
How much have you raised through your, brought buys and your can collection?
$3,500. And we give a lot back to the community, so it isn't just what we raise. We
But
also.
your
Let's-
grant proposal said that you, were forming a 501c3 under the Weyauwega County Natural Resources Foundation, and I'm assuming that that money was going towards trails.
It is, it does go toward trails.
Did it go to the city?
We have used it for signs. There's signage in the community. It goes toward the bunny trail. But,
Because I had asked at one point and I didn't get an answer.
because there was no clarification of the whole funding issue, Donna. We didn't even
It
know.
said the support of the trails are by continual contributions
Where
to
are you reading
Weyauwega
from?
Trails in the grant application. This was your proposal in order for the city to apply for the grant. That you would have a 501c3, that it would be
That's
operating
true.
as a nonprofit through the Waupaca County Natural Resources, that money would be used for the trail. But the city hasn't been aware of that. I wasn't even aware of the fundraising for the last 12 months. I've been told by the trail committee that your contribution was the grant.
Mhm. I understand that. We've missed you at the July 3rd events down at Fairgrounds.
We had a dog in my feelings, so we were not. Anyway.
We won't go there, Donna. That's immaterial. That's
All of this
immaterial.
is unless you have a place to take that $10,000 and spend it.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't have a place, so I would
Yeah.
like to suggest that we do whatever's next to do, because there's nothing to talk about.
Right?
And I'm in favor of talking, but there's nothing to talk about right now.
I can clarify one point, having been associated with the school. I don't know that they have had a formal meeting as has been brought up, but one of the objections would be any hard surface. The minute you talk about blacktop, forget it, on the school property. That's been a standing issue for I don't know how long. They don't want an easy escape route for somebody to drive a car or a motorcycle or anything else there. They probably would be receptive to the idea if you're doing something that is going to be a softscape, but hardscape, I know that's been an ongoing issue since the schools were put there. So in terms of this grant, that has to be hardscape, and that would automatically disqualify right there, because I don't think the school will go along with that.
You do not have a deadline of tonight. The only topic for tonight, or to bring it up tonight, was, there's two reasons. One was, do not bring this back to committee for a while, because there's two things there. Everything that gets discussed at committee, if it moves forward to council, has to get re-discussed, and I'm sure you could tell that my enthusiasm was lacking running through all of that information, but you have it, so that helps. The committee, for whatever reason, just has not been a good place to talk about the trail, and it's not anyone, I can't point to anyone individually, it's just, when I was on the county board, Brown County, that was the same type of environment, and it was just yuck. I mean, that's just the feeling, I don't know a better word for it. So, you do not have a deadline to do something tonight. You still have the Mill Pond Circle section officially in the grant. The big property, the Boringer property, which is the 25 acres, is on the market now, it wasn't before.
And it's for how much? Like,
400 grand for 25 acres, but that's a big, maybe they wanna split some up, maybe they're looking for some money, who knows?
The house is in that price too, isn't it?
The house, and there's, yeah.
Yeah, the house
But
is
the,
too.
the topic is, now, I cannot sit here and tell you that I have asked the property owner, which I'm allowed to do. I think when we had talked about this fizzling at Mill Pond Circle, it was within the first month or two that I started here, because I know I was still going back to Green Bay, and I was only doing that for 2 months. We could ask there and get a final, this is what our land's gonna cost, or no. We could do that, that's an option.
with that one owner.
Well, for two, because you gotta go through two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
we've only talked about the one, but there's really two.
Right.
That's what was told to me. No, we have not gotten anything formal from the school board. We can do that. With what Frank said and with what I've heard about it, it's probably not gonna happen, but
For the record.
that's just a probably because you don't have anything formal. Now,
So-
none of this is really encouraging because we already have an idea that there's a reason why we discussed it, considered it, and moved on. It was a dead end, but it wasn't, you know, the road is still there. Whether it still ends or not, you don't know until you formally ask them that. Now, like I said, if you do anything, please bring it back to council. so that we can have everyone here and not bring it back to committee. I don't mean to indict anyone on any committee, but it's just, when everyone's here, you don't have to repeat all the information. That's helpful. It's tough. I mean, I get it, and I don't know what to do either, because I don't think anyone here doesn't want a trail to be done. And I think when you look at this map, this grant is so small in the scope of the trail dream in the city that, yes, this is a lot of money, but it also, you know, you have to do it a certain way. The other topic that I didn't bring up was, there was actually 2 grants that we were eligible for. The other one was gonna help you pay for land, but the reason why the city probably didn't go for it is because there's even more restrictions, and it was gonna be even bigger headache than what this one even is. And I think that's just, yeah, it's a lot of money. It's $270,000 to $300,000 that the city doesn't have to come up with, but you also don't have that flexibility to do whatever you wanna do either. Now, I would wonder to myself, do you need a 10-foot wide trail? I don't think you do. When they redo Alfred Street in County F, the county's gonna pave a 3-foot shoulder on each side of the road. 3 feet seems to be enough for a bike lane. It's something. Certainly not 10, but those are the rules. And you, like with almost everything with the state, you don't get the money unless they tell you, sit here when we tell you, stand there when we tell you. I mean, that's really, they can do that. And if you won't do it, you don't get the money.
That's kind of where I was going before with that. You
Yeah.
look at Lincoln Street by the fairgrounds there's a possibility that we could add on to the
Mhm.
roadway there,
Yep.
and then take it around up around past the cemetery. That street is in desperate need of some,
Absolutely.
definitely needs some work there. But what's holding us up there is the drainage
Mhm.
from the county fairgrounds.
Yeah, because what you're proposing, or what, and you had good ideas on getting something in Lincoln Street, but when you look at where we're talking about, it's all ditched now. And it's ditched for a reason.
Right,
Yeah, with
You
those
know.
big rocks in it right there
Right.
on South.
right. And they put
Yeah.
that in temporarily because most of their cow-doo-doo was running into the storm sewers,
Mhm.
and we had to get, some way we have to figure out how we're gonna do that on that street. That's why that Elizabeth Street wasn't finished. It only went up as
Sure.
far as it did, is because we had no idea how we were gonna drain that. And that street, I had somebody come to me the other day and tell me that that street is all potholes. I know that, but we need to figure out what we're gonna do with the drainage first, before we can even fix the road. Don't go fix the road, then worry about the drainage later. But I think if we could do something there, we could add on to that. That brings us up to Pine, which eventually would take us around to Clark Street, which would tie into the park.
You know, Mike, I appreciate everything you're saying. As we had talked many, many times, Recreation Committee, nor Weyauwega Trails, neither one of us are experts. East Central Wisconsin Planning does this. And rather than us trying to find that magic end, like you say, Bruce, so where is the end?
Yeah,
If there is something, people that do this are willing to work with us. These are our tax dollars at work. If we could just have the opportunity to even sit down with them and have them look at the maps. They help the
Who are you talking about?
East Central Wisconsin Planning Commission out of Appleton. They and Connie Aber work with the school system all the time.
But what is it that you think they can do in this situation where we got dead ends? What do you think they're gonna do?
I think perhaps they could look at our map
And
and
do what?
maybe be more innovative as to what might work.
But
And
what
they're
is-
familiar with the grants.
But what does that mean, really? What does that mean? You mean just develop paved areas along
No,
South Street?
where there might be a potential trail that could work under the guidelines of the grant.
I think where you're going is, that's half of the battle. The other half is whoever owns the property, are they gonna let you do it?
Absolutely, and I
Right.
understand, I do
Yeah, well,
understand
that's-
both sides of it. Both sides of it.
That's why I'm saying we got nothing to talk about, because people are saying no. You can be innovative as you want, but if they say no,
The people that have
twist
been
their arms,
contacted. Yeah,
what,
people that
bully
have been
'em?
contacted.
they're saying no.
Mhm.
And they'd say, what don't you understand about no, unless you got $400,000? Get out of my face. You know, that's how they would talk down in where Jim came from. You know, get real, get out of here.
It's an interesting word, because at what point, if you keep asking the same thing to a property owner, but you send different people, at what point, even if it's well-intentioned, what point is it bullying too? I mean, I don't know, but the other thing that we don't really know, and I would imagine there might not be a problem, but can you do, we have meet and hunt for a reason, because we're supposed to for the grant, and I wouldn't know unless I reviewed through the grant. Can you bring in volunteers on this stage there? I don't know. Something to look at if
You know, there are the
Council
grants.
wants
The trail in the park right now was built by a grant from Alcoa. Just because this grant falls through, really has nothing to do with all the trails. There are other, use county and see if we can't find some other grants that possibly will not require the same hard surface. We weren't required to put a hard surface in the park,
No, but we're changing it,
No.
and that was a grant.
because we're changing it to suit your grant.
Well,
But-
not my grant.
Well,
Sit-
grant-
your
grant-
grant.
we're in.
The
You want this
grant.
current
Yeah,
grant.
the grant,
But
yes.
there are other grants out there, so maybe we need to investigate trying to get other grants, maybe going to hospitals, going to theater care, going to Aspire, anybody, everybody, go to the Foundry. They see they have tons of money to give away. Not to me, but to other people. So,
This,
but,
yeah.
you know, so this grant doesn't work, because to me, it's painfully obvious this grant is not gonna work. This time, this grant is not gonna work because of no circle pond. So let's go out, because the idea is good. So let's go out and find somebody else that we can, and then go outside city limits too. If we use the state money, we can't. If we use corporate money, then you can go out by Fred Raschke, you can go other places. You open up more windows.
Okay.
Just because one door closes doesn't mean they all are.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Nick. You know, it's been 3 years of endless meetings. There's no compensation. There's just leaving your family at home because your heart and soul is into it. And you know, there comes a point where you just totally get burned out.
Oh, I totally understand that, Mary Jane. I work
Yeah,
at the
I
Foundry, I
know.
work at the coffee shop, and I'm here.
I know.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
But,
if you're
you know,
passionate
just-
about something, you spent 3 years working on one grant,
yeah,
on
yeah.
one grant.
Yeah.
That means you weren't looking at anything else.
That's why I was just saying, if we could
Absolutely.
get something to
I
go
was
from
not.
from the park, Clark Street,
Mhm.
back past the fairgrounds, and then connect with that County F. At least we have something that the people can use to ride to Gill's Landing, because that project we know is gonna go through. So you go to Gill's Landing, you work your way back.
Nothing good.
I mean, even if we have to use Ann Street and Lincoln to Ann, I mean, for right now, until we can find out.
I'm
Other
okay with
options.
all this. I guess the only question that we have, I feel on the table tonight, is the common council willing to give it another month? Because that's what Scott said about what we have, right, Pat?
He said to keep, the frustration when I first started was, how come nothing's being done? And part of it was, well, when it got to winter, they couldn't do the land studies. He said if you wanna get going for the winter, you gotta make a decision like soon, because just like with the treatment plants, once it gets to October, November, things freeze and you're not doing much of anything.
To explore these possibilities, because all the avenues haven't been explored, but I know what you're saying. So do you wanna, I mean, either you kill it tonight, or you extend maybe another month and a half, and see what can be done, and if nothing, then it's dead. But if you wanna kill it tonight, that's your prerogative.
I'd like someone to, for the record, get a real answer from the school. Even though it seems painfully obvious that it won't happen, for the record, instead of saying, well, you didn't try. You said you could, but you didn't. So who's gonna do that? I don't know. You draw straws, I don't know. But Who does that?
It would be me, if you tell me
Okay.
to, but you gotta tell me to though,
I was
too.
hoping you'd volunteer. No, I mean, I knew it was you, but I was
I think
trying
I
to get you to
don't
say
know
it.
about volunteering, I think I'd be the only one left, everyone's looking at the guy, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, that, and then formally ask those two people again, which it's again painfully obvious, but go ahead, for the record. That way you say, well, you speculated and maybe it would've happened. Well, let's do those three things that I know of, and
That doesn't take a lot of effort, and I can do that, if that's
by
what
noon
you'd like to
tomorrow.
do.
No, I'm
Maybe.
kidding, no, that's,
Yeah, no.
but those three things, then that's for the record. Then I don't know who, like Nick said, that's wonderful thinking, cause I boxed into thinking this is how it's gotta be. Is that where they start investigating, they try to figure out where and go out on their own and
As
try
far
to
as I
bring
know, they're
something
free to
back?
talk to anybody they want to, anytime they want, as far as looking for grants from corporations.
So is that, you said, tell us what to do, can I just say, start there? I never
Well,
thought of
I
that.
meant as far as this grant went and working with the city, that's what I was referring to, was to tell us.
Yeah, but right now, we're cooperating, there's nothing to cooperate on.
Yeah.
Really,
I
so,
understand, yeah. So, okay.
I would think that because we are in the budget cycle, we're up at the nth hour for a lot of other city priorities. And we already can fairly, reliably predict that a route to the school is not going to comply with the purpose of the grant. I think that, we should use our time to prioritize the budgeting cycle, and that we should not invest any more time in.
that's fine, but he said it wouldn't take any time, just
Well, it's either me or
pose the question.
something, so, I mean,
You know, that's
Yes.
just, for the record, it's gonna take just minutes compared to what we've taken here tonight.
So your scope is not to look at any other locations then?
No, that would be up to you as a committee to go spearhead if there's any other grants out there, and where
No, I
could you
wasn't
develop?
I wasn't talking about a different grant. I was talking about kind of what Mike was saying, any other location where the
It's
grant could be
All those
utilized.
locations were on roadway that Mike was talking about. He's talking
They're
road,
also, yeah.
and that's,
Walk the city, I mean, he knows the city so well, I never would've come up with what he just even connected here, the dots, and his heart's into it for you, he's not against it.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you can come up with like that? You know, maybe he'll, by tomorrow he'll have another one, but,
Yeah.
so no one's putting anyone down saying you're not involved. Just go the next step then, cause we're seeing, do those three things, school, those two owners, and then say there, for the record, they've been done, but I know, I mean, down deep, I know it's, what the answers are gonna be. I think we all do, but, so start on the next, shift the gear and.
Anything else? I take it we have a motion
Mm-hmm,
and a second on the floor.
mm-hmm.
what was I think the motion was to
Just
read
the
off.
original one, to,
Yeah, so it's not really, the motion was to bring all this here and then have a motion, so really we don't have.
no, we don't.
You do probably wanna withdraw it, and that's, we gotta talk about that procedurally anyway, because the topic should be on the agenda. The way we've always done it is there's a motion coming forward,
mhm.
All right.
the motion was get here, and then what?
Donna was the motion and Vic
Mhm.
was the second.
I'll
You guys would-
withdraw.
if you wanna withdraw, yeah.
I'll
Sorry,
withdraw.
second.
No, I'll withdraw in a second.
Okay. All right. Motion's been withdrawn and also the second has been withdrawn.
I'll make a comment, it's not a big deal for me to call those two property owners on Mill Pond Circle. It's probably a bigger deal to call the school and work through that whole process and then try to find meetings, because we're gonna be booked tight with meetings in the next couple weeks with budget,
And-
so
Okay.
following through, I'm not diverting any type of responsibility you may put onto me, but I'm just saying, Mill Pond Circle seems to be very important because the DOT is clinging to that yet for us. Calling them is not a lot of work to say, hey, are you interested? If no,
So the
what's the
school
price? I
thing
mean,
is a
we'll
lot
ask
of
the
work.
price and then I'll come back to you and say, here, if you wanna go there, this is what it costs. And right now, we don't have that number, we just know it's gonna cost more.
Okay.
So if you wanna make a motion for me to call them or inquire on that, you can. You can do whatever you wanna do.
I'd like to make a motion that our administrator call the 2 property owners out in the Mill Pond Circle area for their willingness to sell an easement for the trail, and how much that would cost, or their whole property. Is that worded pretty good?
You can't ask how much it would cost,
Well,
Well, I'm sure they'll tell me.
but you can't ask.
You're right.
Okay.
And so it
You're
will
right.
incur more expense from the consultant for you to ask that question, because he'll have to follow up on negotiating the easement in order for us to have another thing to happen.
As part of the grant, I cannot ask how much they'll sell the easement. As part of the greater plan of building the road or extending the road, if they say, here's my whole property, I wear more than one hat. I mean, I would check that, you know, I would make sure that we're not misstepping at all. But yeah, I see what you're saying. But if they come to you and say, well, here's 12 acres, well, that's obviously more than an easement, 700 feet, you know. I can tell you that whether this proceeded or did not tonight, I was planning on at some point calling those property owners, because if the idea is to get some kind of a road or a solution out there, we're gonna have to talk to them no matter what, so.
Years ago, that was the plan, is to put a road back there with a park.
And that's why the city owns
Extend it
10 or
to-
12 acres right in there right now too, that we can't get to.
And the truth is, even though they may see it opposite, is this whole trail experience has brought that back to light and the need for it, which I would think if I was them and wanted to sell and liquidate my property, that, oh, that's another way
Could be.
to get a
Don't know
trail
if they
through
asked.
there, but it's really, to me, it brought it to light back months ago when we first talked about it. I said, yeah, there is no service out there, especially if it rains there, so.
If you wanna cover the city, you could say direct the administrator or the consultant, and then that way one of us will ask. And I would prefer myself, because we don't get billed for that, though you're paying for me to be doing the work, so I mean.
Right.
So now that she's,
We have a motion, but we need a second.
Hold on.
No, but
You're
the
gonna
motion
direct the
isn't-
administrator or the consultant to contact the 2 property owners on Mill Pond Circle to see what? How much they're gonna sell the easement for?
well,
No, you can't ask
Okay.
that.
So.
To see how they're willing?
Their willingness.
Ask if they would reconsider granting an easement for this project. And I would also add some direction on where you want the info to come back to, because I'm hoping it's not to the rec committee, that it's back here for a final decision.
We're just gonna end it.
Can hear,
If you want him to report back to council.
yes.
Okay, anybody second?
No second?
Motion then to- Good. All right,
I move that we recognize the Weyauwega Trails Group for their efforts to develop trails and to research this grant. And that we recognize that we have run into dead ends that prevent us from fulfilling the grant requirements. And that we,
Hold on.
okay.
Could we play the
Can't keep
tape
up
back,
with
maybe? Maybe we can ask Ruben if he'll
You
play the
can't
tape
mumble a
back.
whole paragraph to me.
We can relive this whole meeting.
think I've heard
Recognize
of it.
Weyauwega Trails for their efforts in developing grants. Recognize that we have run into dead ends in fulfilling the grant. And end our contract with Mead and Hunt.
Do you have that written down by chance?
No,
Was it if you did?
no, sorry, I just thought of it.
Okay. Like you have shirt cut on, but.
Recognizing the trail group for work in helping, in developing the grant. Recognizing that we have run into dead ends with fulfilling the grant, and also recognizing Mead and Hunt.
Finishing our contract with Mead and Hunt. Ending, finishing, settling.
Maybe you've heard the motion on the floor, but you have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded. And I ask for a roll call vote.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Brunner,
Nay.
Allenstein,
Aye.
Sandro,
Aye.
Gunderson.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you. Anything else from our committee?
No.
Thank you. Planning commission?
I would make a motion to recommend approval of the request by Tom Radke to split parcel number 35-04-28-50.
Motion's been made, do I have a second?
Aye, on second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or comments?
A quick comment. Mr. Radke has been unable to sell the property. It's an extended property. It's got frontage on Second and Third. Basically what he's doing is he's splitting the property in half. He is then going to sell off the northern half to the neighboring property owner. This motion here is just to split this property. The house on the southern end of the property is still, which is actually the address on Second, that's still gonna be on the market for sale. The person that's buying the northern section is going to want to combine them, but that's another topic for another day. So this one is just to split the property so that he can sell off. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have one. Didn't we just combine those properties?
We didn't combine this one.
No, that
This was a different one.
This is a different one.
We didn't do anything with this one.
The other one we combined was on East Main, or West Main, I'm sorry. And before that, it was across the street. Mr. Bateman had a request for them too.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the request by Randy Mitchell, Mitchell Automotive, to rezone parcel 35-04-8225 from B1 General Business to B2 Highway Business District.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or comments?
The intent is for Mitchell Automotive to move across the street on Mill Street. Right now, the former Acres of America building is zoned B1, which is usually a more professional services type building. You cannot have an automotive repair shop in that district, so his request now, there's gonna be another one coming. This one is just to change the zoning to highway business. Within a year, he's looking at potentially moving the auto repair shop. At this meeting, we had the neighbor directly to the west of the proposed building. He came, had no issue with the change of the zoning, had no issue with the idea of having that automobile repair shop next to him. He did have some questions about the site fencing. Those are all for a later meeting because Mitchell Automotive has to formally apply to be able to move the business, which is something that in a B1 you don't have to do. The city can then put conditions on, fencing, barriers, all those things. Within a year, that should be coming up.
Where's he gonna move?
Right where he is now, right across the street.
Oh.
Where Acres
A
of
year from
America
now.
was.
Right.
In about a year, yeah, he's gonna do some modifications to the building, but he didn't wanna do that if he couldn't get the zoning changed, so.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. New business, set the Halloween trick or treat hours.
What did we do last year? We kept it on Sunday to,
Daytime hours, remember, was safer, was our issue, remember?
right, and on the weekend when it's more relaxed with,
Last 2 years it's been from 4 to 7 p.m. 2010 it was 4 to 6. 2009 it was 3 to 7. That being a Saturday, all the other years has been Sunday.
what did we have, 4 to 7 last?
4 to 7 was
And
last year.
it doesn't seem like anyone, 2 hours seems to be, not that I care, we can do it 3 hours again, but after 2, it doesn't seem like many people are doing anything.
About
Right.
seven-ish it could start too,
Mm-hmm.
now, and that's in a month from now.
Mm-hmm. It'll be good.
I'd actually like to see it from 3 till 5.
I like that
Get it
idea.
done.
Get it done when it's fairly early.
Are we talking on a Sunday though?
Sunday before the 27th.
I checked Packer games that night, so you don't have to worry about Packer games.
So earlier the better, there you go.
There.
Is it a home, no, we're out probably, you have to worry if it was a home game or not, sorry.
It is my anniversary.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to, on the 27th of October, have trick or treating from 3 till 5 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we have a approval of a operator's license for Robert Sager II at the trading post.
I'll make the motion, we approve the operator's license for Robert Sater II for the trading post.
I'm second that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I have just one thing, that Roger Perry has put in his resignation for the Board of Appeals and Board of Review. At this time, I would like to appoint Freddie Gage to take that position of Board of Appeals and Board of Review.
We will put that on the special meeting when we have that, if we have that in the next week or two. The Board of Appeals, you're supposed to, by our ordinance, have 2 alternates. And you should always have 5 people in attendance or you can't hold the meeting. And so as we were looking through the code, not only were we 1 short and we can have Mr. Gage considered, but we also have never had 2 alternates. It's not a huge problem because up until within the last couple of weeks, that committee hadn't met in about 3 years. And even when they did meet the other night, it was not to take any official action, so we were still legal in that sense, but maybe not according to our ordinances, so. I believe Mr. Mayor had mentioned to me that it was a little difficult to find a volunteer, and I'm sure it may even be difficult to find 2 more. But the good news is these do not meet on a real regular basis, so it can wait until next meeting. But congratulations on finding a volunteer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You said Fred, right? Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to 9, administrators report.
I'll make it quick. We're working on the budget. Myself, Jerry, Christie, we've gotten preliminary figures on how we've done with our expenses. This year, as we've mentioned by Jerry, is brand new to being the police chief. He did not put together the budget for this year. I was obviously brand new and inherited budgets for this year. Whether they're allocated appropriately, I won't know till the end of the year. Unfortunately, I've got to get a budget going now. What I do know and what Jerry knows is that we need to take care of certain things, and we're being prudent with those decisions. And so after a full year of that, I think for the next year's budget, we'll have a good idea of what we need to take care of. I think you look at sewers, you look at a lot of different things that we're having problems with, and it's costing us more money because perhaps we hadn't been taking care of them for quite a long time. So we're trying to fix those things.
Your new system helps you track things a lot better too, won't it?
We're fine tuning it, and that's an awesome segue because we just got the utility billing piece of that up and running. The utility bills are about a week later than normal, because we insisted that this company get them out through our new software. This one is later than the others because, like I said, with payroll, every 2 weeks you get an opportunity to fine tune it and get moving. With accounts payable, every week you're running checks, and we got those 2 running. The utility billing we only do once a month, and it's a lot more intensive. Along the way, we also lost our representative with the company. They ceased to be employed there. So the good news is we ran our bills through the new system, and they're in the mail. Other than that, you did approve at last month's meeting, or 2 months ago, to put out an RFP for website redesign. We got 7 bids. It closed on Friday. They range from $500 to $1,000. I think we even got one that quoted us $30,000 for a brand new website. That one certainly has all the bells and whistles, but way more than we need. So, but we got it, and there's a couple cool things to look at there too. That will be coming to you in October with a recommendation on where we should go, what we should do. Other than that, I'll keep it.
Okay.
I think I've said enough tonight.
Next, then, we'll move on to set our meetings for the October committee meetings.
The key here is, per the budget schedule that you had approved, the budget itself is not going to be complete until October 4th, which is next week Friday. I believe you can start your meetings October 7th. The one request I have is that the Finance Committee is the very last committee to meet because they'll do a once-over on the whole budget before it goes to the full council. Council's on October 21st. That is a significant date for, we have to post certain things with our budget process, so October 21st is really the day that the council will take up the budget. So I don't mean to put you in a box, but between October 7th and, I'm not sure what the 17th, 18th? That would be the time to get all of your committees, hopefully the week of the 7th, if you need to meet about the budget. That'll be Police, Public Works, the Rec Committee potentially, and Finance. I believe it was Public Works tentatively on October 7th.
Yep.
Finance was tentatively September 4th, or October 14th.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, I'd like to have that one last, so if you can't fit in police or anything else in that week of the 7th, you maybe have a day or two to move back Finance.
I'm fine
Yeah,
with
you can move finance back.
Really, you
Wednesday.
can only move back to like Tuesday or Wednesday, because we'd still need to get everything put together to bring to council.
You wanna make it Wednesday?
The 9th
16th.
or the 16th? Yeah, anytime that week is fine, it's the next week. Shoes.
And do you wanna do rec on the 9th? Or 8th?
Rec.
Recreation,
Yeah, so
fund for budget.
And I should say again, October 21st is the preliminary review of your budget. Your final approval and review is in late November.
That's, if that's okay with you, I'll check with Johanna Wednesday, she just doesn't like Mondays.
This, no, that's
So-
what,
October 9th is a Wednesday.
that's fine.
Okay, recreation, October 9th,
At what time?
6.
6? All right, then we need a police.
Business for that?
Okay, well, you will with the budget.
Yeah, that's right.
Monday the 14th is open now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. that sounds good.
Except,
6.
oh, never mind. Donna, does Monday the 14th work?
Yep, it works for me.
Scott, does it work for you?
Time?
6.
6?
6 for police too? Is
Yeah.
that okay, Bruce?
Yeah.
So finance is 6 too?
Sure.
Finance,
Is that what-
do you want it at 6? I did have 5:30.
Oh. It's better at
Yeah.
5:30.
It might
for
be better
you.
to do it 5:30
Yeah,
for finance,
okay,
just in case it takes longer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not that it possibly could.
But that's the 16th.
Yep.
All right, so we got Public Works on Monday, October 7th at 6. Police on Monday, October 14th at 6.
Right.
Finance on October 16th at 5:30. Excuse me, Wednesday, October 16th. Recreation's gonna be on Wednesday, October 9th at 6. Do we need public property, ordinance, or plan? At this point, I don't think so. Unless something comes up.
No.
Okay.
No, I'll just remind everybody that tomorrow night is the
Work
City Hall
session.
work session. So,
City Hall.
it is voluntary, it is pro bono.
Is it here,
It is here,
in
Big
this
room.
room? Big room?
big one.
I'm in the big room tomorrow.
Did you just hear a time?
5:30, the intent is to run it for 90 minutes.
Yes.
Mr. Council President is going to preside over the opening ceremonies, I guess. The fire district meets at 7 o'clock tomorrow night though, so
Oh, so
90
you
minutes
guys
is
have to
really
do-
what we planned for, and it just turned out to be lucky that if we ended at 7, you can get over to the fire district meeting afterwards.
Thanks.
Yep. One other topic that I missed was your cases for these Chromebooks will be coming to City Hall tomorrow, or perhaps Wednesday morning. It's gonna have room for your cord, notepad, your phone. It's kind of a mini briefcase with a shoulder strap on it, so the only thing is they all look the same. So we'll figure that out.
Is there something that we had to have special council meeting for?
The treatment plant, but that depends on whether or not AgriPure can get to us with their future plans. Our financing consultant,
Do you wanna let me know?
we will let you know, and if need be, it can wait till October 21st, if we need it. I'll check with you though.
Okay. Any other meetings?
No, that's enough.
Okay, then I ask that we go to number 11, I ask for a closed session.
I want to read off.
Closed session pursuant to 19.851C, Wisconsin statutes, consideration of employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any city employee who is subject to the jurisdictions and authority of the council. Purpose of the closed session is to discuss wages for the 2014 budget. Council may choose to reconvene in open session at the completion of the closed session in order to take action on items from the closed session. Motion to do that?
I so move.
I'll second
Need a roll call?
Don't go to sleep on me now yet, guys.
Yeah.
Motion's been made second, roll call?
Sandro.
it.
Here,
It's good
Gunderson.
food.
Aye.
Brunner. Brunner.
Aye.
Allenstein.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Give a side note, we're gonna just adjourn from closed session, so there won't be any action afterwards, so you can end your night a little early.
You don't need me to stay, do you?